Hello and welcome. You're with IndiaPostLive.com, India's first live conversation web television portal where all of you can interact in our conversations simply at the click of a button. You can join, you can participate, you can talk, you can send us your posts, your audio and video comments, and of course your tweets at @IndiaPostLive and #IndiaPostLive. Well, the conversation we're about to embark on today is on a very interesting topic. The new government has made it quite clear that the United Nations military observers on India and Pakistan are no longer welcome. They have been asked to vacate their premises in the capital and Srinagar.
The Narendra Modi government is in no mood to allow the United Nations office in Kashmir and Delhi to remain as a white elephant. It has recently asked the United Nations military observer group in India and Pakistan to vacate the official premises in New Delhi and Srinagar. This move comes as a shock to the UN office, which has been here since 1949. However, for the past 4 decades, this office has been there almost like an unwanted guest. Government spends a good amount of taxpayers' money on maintaining this office, which has outlived its relevance. This move is also seen as a part of a subtle and yet pragmatic Kashmir policy of the new Modi government.
So what does this tell about the Modi government's Kashmir policy, and what does this mean, the larger picture? That is what we're going to talk about. In the studio, I have with me General Ata Hasnain. He is, of course, been an army commander in Kashmir, and he has led the anti-insurgency operations, and of course works with several think tanks. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the conversation. I also have in the studio Rashni Khair. He is a social activist. He works with an NGO called Roots in Kashmir, which promotes the Kashmiri culture and ethos. Thank you so much, Rashni, for joining the conversation. I also have with me on the phone line senior journalist Seema Guha. We will talk to her soon, but first let me get opening comments from you, sir. What does this mean?
Okay, let me start by saying that first of all, I'm not an expert on this. This is all about political diplomacy. I'm more of a practitioner as far as military aspects are concerned, but having said that, it's important to read the situation the way the indications are. To say that this is part of the new government's policy, is it premature? Have you seen the policy emerging? It's been 5 or 6 weeks since the government has come into being. As complex a subject as Kashmir, or the Jammu and Kashmir issue, to have a policy in place is not so easy. It's going to take some time. Secondly, you can read this eviction order, so-called eviction order, from 2 angles. Number one, it is an indicator. It is an indicator not given in black and white that we are doing away with this mission completely, but an indicator to the UN that, see, time has come for you to wind up.
Right.
That is one. The other way is purely administrative. You are telling them, you have promised a couple of years ago to start paying for this accommodation. You haven't paid for it, and it's about time you found premises for yourself in Delhi and Srinagar. So there are 2 angles to it. So I don't think we should jump to conclusions.
Okay. Are we jumping to conclusions by saying that they are unwanted guests? Because, that it's the Indian taxpayers' money.
Well, if you read two things together. One, they have been asked to leave this building, which they occupied for 40 years. Okay, this is one. We'll not go into policy matters to begin with. 2, then the same day, the MEA spokesperson says it's our policy, and we have maintained it for 40 years, that we do not believe that they have a role to play after the Shimla agreement. So if you read the 2 statements together, it's a very clear indication that you are a guest who is not wanted anymore. We don't like your presence here, so it's time. It's about time you start thinking about your departure from, this country. And in any case, I don't see much purpose in their being here. That's something that we believe in.
Can I get Seema Guha on the phone line? Ma'am, you just heard the opening comments of General Ata Hasnain and Rashni Khair. Do you think the United Nations Military Observers Group on India and Pakistan had become obsolete in this country?
Completely. I agree with both of them. It's completely obsolete. I don't know exactly what they were doing here. I think it's about time. It's a good indication that, yes, there's no point. Should we pay for their accommodation? UN has enough money. Let them pay. And it is an indication that finally you need to leave, because what were they doing anyway? They were doing nothing. Kargil happened, this happened, so many wars happened. What did they do? I mean, they might be reporting to the UN, but it had no effect either here. It meant neither this nor that. So I just feel it's the right step. And this is the way the government was thinking for a long time. And I don't even know whether this is the Modi government's policy or both governments thought the same. Even the UPA.
Okay.
Even the UPA might have had a hand in it saying that, okay, they should be given notice.
It is time.
So,
okay.
yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let me bring in Jamil Shaheen from Srinagar. We have an online guest who definitely has a reaction on this. Welcome to the conversation. Mr. Shaheen, what is your view on this? Do you think, it is not exactly a political issue? Do you think everyone in the administration thought that it is time for them to say goodbye?
In fact, this is a long overdue decision.
Okay.
Left to me, I will say the whole UN is irrelevant. Especially...
Okay, that's pretty strong.
Power lies somewhere else. So decisions are made somewhere else. What's the role of UN? Now, if you go by strictly the legal parlance, this was UN military observer group for monitoring ceasefire. Now, why is the ceasefire line? The ceasefire line got converted into line of actual control in Shimla Agreement, as Shimla Agreement. So practically they have no rule, but at the same time, as General has put it very rightly, he has just drawn a very minute line. And you need to see first whether they have been asked to leave the country or leave the premises.
Right.
So it is yet premature to jump on the conclusion, because perhaps they have been asked to leave the premises, maybe they are not paying the rent.
And find their own accommodation.
Exactly, and they can fend for themselves also. But at the same time, you have to see, basically, these are peripheral issues. The main thing is UN resolution. Why is it there? You need to work there. Get it removed from that Security Council, whatever is that. So it has no role there. It shouldn't be there.
Right.
That's final conclusion will be that.
Okay, let me now ask General Sahab one question. For many of us who are for the layman, let's try and understand what exactly did the UN Observers Group do? What were they doing here?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. Let me start by telling you, I've been a military observer myself in Africa. Right? I've been in Rwanda. I've been in Mozambique. The military observer group is an unarmed entity, right? They're not armed. That's the first thing that the public must know. They're without arms. Their weapon is their tongue or their flag. Okay. This is what they normally use, right?
Not the pen.
Their purpose, oh, you can say the pen very much. Their purpose is to monitor the agenda which is set up and report any violations of that agenda. Now, the very fact that the Karachi Agreement of 1949, the UN resolution of 1949 have all been overtaken by history. And 1972 commenced a new narrative in this entire game. The fact remains that this is now redundant. All this is redundant. India, on its part, decided to retain the group from an angle of, you can say, leaving it in the area of grey. Keeping it as an entity, letting it remain in Kashmir. They can even cross over from time to time. But not having any locus standi as far as reporting and monitoring is concerned. Now, for example, you can see that the ceasefire has been in place for the last 10 years. From 26th November 2003, the ceasefire has been in place. They've had no role in monitoring the ceasefire.
Right, there have been violations. And
there have been violations galore from the other side.
Yes.
And the other aspect which everyone needs to take note of, if there is any validity, if there was any importance that they actually had, and which India was not recognizing in any way, to make themselves important, they should have, if nothing else, at least reported the violations in terms of infiltration. You saw the infiltration which took place in Kargil. You saw the infiltration which has been taking place in the valley over the last 25 years. Nowhere ever has the UN ever come in to report an issue, even independently, devoid of India. We don't recognize its presence there, but we only allow it to remain there. Administratively, they are there, they do nothing, they only cross over to the other side. From the Pakistan side, we find at our posts and pickets They appear from time to time. You find a flag of the UN going up and things like that. And many times the other side shouts across to us that the UN observers have come. We don't take cognizance of anything at all. That is our policy. Our policy is hands off as far as the UN observer group is concerned, but we tolerate them here. We administratively support them and nothing else.
All right. So far in the conversation, there is an overall agreement that the group is redundant and obsolete, especially because of the Shimla agreement. But what about the separatists? The separatists obviously want the group to stay, and they feel this move has implications for the larger issue of Kashmir.
You see, I have an interesting take. When I got a call from your office to attend this, the first thing I told Asha was, you know, this was like this Friday afternoon thing after the namaz. They would all gather and carry a piece of paper and go to their office, and there would be, you know, a huge pile of papers which separatists would give them every now and then. Now, obviously, they may not have this, you know, any more to do. But I have an interesting story to tell you. When I was a student and I was studying in Rajouri, which was like the border town, I got friendly with two of these military observers who were posted there, and we used to take a walk in the evening. So after walking with them for many days, when I got very friendly, one day I asked him, what exactly is your role here? And he started looking at me, he made a face, and then, well, he couldn't find words for maybe 10 minutes. And then he says, well, it's not very clear what exactly our role is, but we have to report if there are any ceasefire violations. And this was when we were ourselves victims of this, you know, transgression from Pakistani side, because we have a Kashmiri Pandit. So we had suffered these intrusions, and because of this we had to leave our home. I asked them, did you at any point of time report all these transgressions that happened from Pakistan? And he had no answer. So honestly, if the government wants to keep a white elephant, it is time we should call their farce and say, we don't need you anymore. You're welcome to go back wherever you have come from. Really, I don't see any reason why government should not tell them straight away, rather than asking them to vacate a building. We should tell them, you vacate our country, go back wherever you have come from. We don't need them here.
I'm actually thinking of applying for a job there, do nothing and get paid. Okay, let me try and get Kamran Shafi. Kamran sir is a very senior journalist, of course, Pakistan. Both of you know him. Sir, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much. It's always an honor to have you. Can you hear me, Kamran sir? Okay, I don't think he is able to hear us right now. All right, we'll try and get the audio back, but I would love to know what he has to say about this entire issue. All right, coming back to what we were talking about the separatist issue, if we still have Seema Guha on the phone line?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, okay. Ma'am, we were talking about the separatists issue, you know, the fact that they want the UN military observers group to stay. What do you think their reaction will be now, and, you know, how do you think, because they feel that this entire move of the government is, of course, going to have implications on their stand on the Kashmir issue?
It really doesn't matter what they think. It really doesn't matter. I mean, what do they do? As one of your speakers was saying, they come and give a note or a memorandum. It's really completely, I agree, they have no role at all. And yes, India has been saying, what is there to hide about this, that we don't want third-party intervention, we don't want the UN here. We are going to India and Pakistan, and the Kashmiri people will have to solve this issue. So whether they are here or not really doesn't matter. And it's about time they went, and I think it's a clear indication that very soon, within a few years or within a few months, they'll be asked to just vacate wherever they are in Kashmir and take rented accommodation if they have to stay. And India doesn't want to get into a tangle with the UN and, you know, chuck them out like that. They're just being polite.
Ma'am, what I wanted to ask you was, you know, this has happened only now. Whether you just said that this was in the offing, and even the previous government had been talking about it and had been probably...
Yeah. They always, I mean, every successive government in India never thought these people ever had a role here. Maybe at that time, just after independence, when they were there to monitor and all, they might have been useful. But after that, I don't know why they are here.
Ma'am, but
just
the fact...
a waste of UN money also.
The taxpayers' money perhaps. But ma'am, the fact that this has happened in this government, this has happened by this government, does it give out a signal on the Modi government's Kashmir policy? what signal are we getting as journalists?
I think it's a little early. Because this, as I told you, with UN here, it really doesn't matter. I don't know whether it gives, I mean, we have to wait and see.
Okay.
The outline should be much more clear.
All right, all right. Thank you so much,
because
ma'am.
It's too early.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Too early.
It's too early to read this as a major sign of anything.
Okay.
Because it is not only the Modi government, every government, we don't want third-party intervention. That is the Indian position all along.
Okay, the government does not want a third-party intervention. All right, General Sahab.
That has been the line of the government, and I agree entirely with Seema that this has been the line of the government all along. Having said that, I think I must just introduce an interesting aspect here, that the UN office at Srinagar, where it is located, is a symbol. I hope people realize it is a symbol. Every time that there is a street protest, the separatists always call for what is called the UN Chalo.
Yes.
And every time everyone gathers at the UN to flood them with referendums and things like that. So it's a very symbolic thing. So perhaps the government is looking at it from that angle. But let me also introduce this aspect of a comment on what Seema just said. Is it too early to read into the policy of the government?
Yeah.
Although in the beginning I took this line that it is a little early, but I think it is testing the waters. It is sending out an appropriate message that, see, we can take strong decisions. If required, we will take strong decisions which have been pending for some time, which no one was willing to touch for some time. We are willing to re-examine all these issues. I think that's a very important aspect which is being conveyed by this act.
All right, let me try and get back Jamil Shaheen, if he can hear me. We just talked of this UN Chalo policy that the separatists always have whenever they want to protest. So this building, this establishment, do you think it was an eyesore in a way, an eyesore that the Indian taxpayer was paying, this particular building? Mr. Jamil, could you hear that? Could you hear my question?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I was asking you that this particular building in Kashmir, the premises of the Office of the United Nations Military Observers, do you think it was an eyesore? The fact that what the General Sahab said, UN Chalo, and every time there was a protest, they would be marching towards that building. Was it an eyesore as well for the government?
Actually when you had nothing to go, then it was Chalo UN Chalo. Basically, you used to have different kinds of issues. There will be an issue with the state government, then you will go to secretariat, you will have any other issue. But when you have nowhere to go, when you are just making these separatist issues, you want to raise these separatist issues, then UN was the most appropriate thing. And ultimately, it used to be only the eyesore. I agree with you.
Okay, all right. Now let me bring in Kamran Shafi sir. Kamran sir, of course, we all know, senior journalist, talking to us from Pakistan. Sir, welcome to the conversation. It's always an honor having you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, sir? Okay. I have with me in the studio General Ata Hasnain, who has worked in Kashmir. I also have with me Rashneek Khair, who is part of an NGO called Roots in Kashmir. And we were talking about the government order to vacate the premises in the capital and in Srinagar of the United Nations Military Observers. Sir, your reaction on this development?
Well, I didn't hear what the two gentlemen said before me.
Yeah.
All I know is that this was a UN-mandated military mission, unarmed, of course, which would look at incidents of ceasefire line violations, which India incidentally has not allowed them to do since 1972. My basic point is this, that it's only people who have something to hide who would not allow unarmed observers from the United Nations, mandated by the Security Council, to come and look at alleged or real. May I please finish?
Please go on. Yeah.
Thank you. Alleged or real cross-border violations.
Right.
For example, this recent one about a year ago, where it was said an Indian Jawan was decapitated by people who went from our side of the border. I remember being on one of NDTV's shows at that time. And what I said then was that it is exactly this sort of thing that the UN military observers could then look at. And if indeed somebody from Pakistan had gone to do it, then the entire blame would be ours. But no proof was shown. Pakistan was pilloried all across the world. We did not know. I'm not saying that poor man did not lose he was not decapitated. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I have no proof that it was done by soldiers or militants from here with sharp knives. He could have had his head blown off with a rocket launcher fired by who knows who. So all I'm saying is that it's a civilized way forward where you have a dispute, and there is a dispute, is to have observers sanctioned by the Security Council. Now, how India has done that, I don't know. That is up to the UN to decide or not decide.
All right.
But I think we should open it up and let other people come and see it if we aren't civilized enough to form a joint commission of officers from both sides of the border to go and look at these things.
All right. But, sir, India's position, as my two guests were, talking just before you joined us, and also it is known that India has always, said no to a third party. Has always said no to a third-party intervention, especially after the Shimla Agreement of 1972, which is what India feels makes this entire establishment redundant and obsolete. And that is what my guests were saying.
Well, that is the long-held Indian view, and I know that view. But the point is, if you read the Shimla Agreement, while it says that Pakistan's issues with India will be settled bilaterally, it no way says that trilateral or multilateral efforts will not be brought in. It doesn't ban those whatsoever. The English is very, very clear. And if there is this festering sore, and the general, I think, was the last commander, wasn't he, in Kashmir, he knows perfectly well how every few weeks rapes are happening, the bazaars are shut down, Srinagar is like a fortress. So, I mean, we know all of that. So there is a problem. India can't pretend and shut its eyes and say there's no problem in Kashmir.
Can you respond?
Mr. Kamran, excuse me, Mr. Kamran, has any third party been of any help to you or to us or to India?
Well, it hasn't been because of your intransigence, I would say. That is why, because you don't accept it. If we accept it with open arms, or even leave it to the Kashmiris, bhai, मैं तो कहता हूँ कश्मीरियों पे छोड़ दो. But then get your 700,000 troops out of there. I mean, you know.
Please respond. Please respond.
This is going to end nowhere. You keep going on and on and on and on fighting over this.
With utmost regards to Kamran sir, really, I am a great fan of his, and I read everything that he writes. With utmost regards, Jameel is a Kashmiri. I am a Kashmiri. So, you know, one, nobody stops these UN observers from giving.
We are the sufferers.
They are. No, and nobody stops them from writing to UN about transgressions that happen or whatever happens. So one, that is, and two, this mandate, that UN mandate we are talking about, was India went to the United Nations. Now we are saying we don't need them. Now we are saying we don't need them after the Shimla Agreement. The Shimla Agreement is very clear, unless one wants to read between the lines. The lines are very clear. It's a bilateral. There is no chance. That is why we are consistently saying they may want to go back on their word, which Pakistan is kind of.
Would you like to respond, General Sahab?
Of course, absolutely. And I repeat that. I'm a great fan of Mr. Kamran Shafi. I read every word you write, sir.
We are all fans.
Great fan of yours. And the kind of discourses you bring about and a very middle level kind of a thing, I need to respond first to your last point. First, 700,000 troops. This has been a constant thing which Pakistan has always been bringing into the international arena. 700,000. I wish I could invite you. And I wish we could sit together and visit and go and see where these 700,000 troops have been hidden by the Indian Army. We need to be pragmatic about this. There are no 700,000 troops in Kashmir. I can count for you exactly how many there are. We won't go into it. But notwithstanding that, let's go back to the other aspect. It is the mutuality. It is the aspect of bilateralism. We agreed to it in 1972. I fully agree with you that an agreement does not disagree to bring in other parties. Now, this is a very awkward way. You know, you're jisko kehte hain Urdu mein baal ki khal utarna. No, you're going into this aspect that since we have agreed to bilateralism, but you can still go about and bring in trilateralism or quadrilateralism. That's not so, sir. The spirit is bilateral. We have to discuss it together. And we are aware for 25 years there's a problem there. We are aware for 25 years this has been sponsored from your side, right? We have been very, very pragmatic about it. We've been very tolerant about it. If this UN Military Observer Group still wanted to remain relevant, then it should have, without even taking India into confidence, it should have raised issues of infiltration, issues of border action teams coming and raiding our posts, etc., on its own. They've got access to all the posts from the Pakistan side. From our side, they don't. So I do not take this in this manner, that as if we can continue having bilateralism and continue having a third party still monitoring our affairs out here. I think the spirit of Shimla Agreement is very clear.
I have a small point to make. They were there in 1989 when the mass exodus of Kashmiri Pandits happened at the hands of Pakistan-sponsored terrorists, JKLF and Hizbul Mujahideen, and Pandits were also getting raped and killed, and they did not say a word. Even today, there is not a report by UN General Military Observers today. Even till date, there is not a report in UN which says that this has happened. There's no word. So, unless they are acting at somebody's behest, why do we want them here?
All right.
No, that's rather rich. It's rather rich to say that the UN would be acting on Pakistan's behest. However, I would say that there is no doubt that Hindu Pandits had to leave the valley. There is no doubt that atrocities were committed from what one reads. But did India then object to the Security Council? No, it didn't, because it insists on thinking that the Kashmir issue isn't alive. It isn't an issue at all. That everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine. And as far as the general is saying 700,000, okay, not 700, 600,000, 500,000, 400,000. I mean, that's not the issue.
Mr. Kamran, everything is hunky-dory for everybody else but excepting Kashmiris. Because if fire engulfs a house, it's a disaster. But you need this fire in the kitchen to cook bread and butter for so many people. And Kashmir has become that kitchen fire, and Kashmiris are being used like fodder. The question is, the two countries ultimately, how far our blood is being utilized for vested interests to so many other vested interest groups and parties and countries. Question is, kindly scientific advancement is there. Please devise some other drink other than Kashmiri blood to satisfy them. Enough has gone, enough waters have flown beyond through Kashmir, and enough blood has flown. Now there has to be a time when you have to... That's a
very, very emotional statement there from Jamil. Thank you so much.
It's quite right.
Yes, enough Kashmiri blood has flown, enough Kashmiri blood has shed, enough houses have been burnt, enough women have been raped. And I think at this note, it is time to wind up the conversation, which of course will continue on the portal. But a very large issue has been raised. Probably, as my other guest said, Kamran sir, it is still too early. They have been asked to vacate the premises. Whether the complete organization, the complete establishment is going to be disbanded or not is still not very clear as far as we are concerned. But what my guests have said, which you have disagreed to, is the basic redundancy of this institution in India, in Delhi and in Srinagar. Let us adopt a wait and watch policy, as everyone has said. We just had Seema Guha talking to us, another senior journalist. She also said, let's adopt a wait and watch and see where exactly this goes and how the government is planning to take its Kashmir issue forward, and probably this was just testing the waters. So this is, I think I have wrapped up, I have summed up the conversation. I would like to thank Jamil. Thank you so much. That emotional statement that you made, I think, kind of said everything that there is to say about the Kashmir issue. Kamran sir, thank you so much for joining us with your comments. I think it added a lot to what everybody was saying, and it was rather one-sided till you came in. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank Rashniq, General sir. Thank you so much. As always, it's always a pleasure having you. The conversation...
It was one-sided right in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you came and made it interesting, I can tell you that.
Let me just say this as a last thing.
Surely.
We must do everything, both countries must do everything to stop the spilling indeed of Kashmiri blood.
Yes.
I am 9/10 of Kashmiri myself. So we have to do that. And any young man who dies, whether it's an Indian soldier or a Pakistani soldier, any young man who dies is one more life gone to waste. It's another family without food. Let's stop this, become civilized, for God's sake.
All right.
I just have one request. Kamran sir, I am still waiting for that Kashmiri Pandit column that I wrote to you once about.
All right.
Write about us in Pakistan. Write about us in Pakistan.
And I want that post on IndiaPostLive.com as well. I want both of you to write to me on India Post Live as well. Your blogs, your posts, your comments. And of course, like I said, the conversation through you, through all of you, and through all our viewers will continue on the portal through your comments and audio and video comments and your tweets. Thank you so much for watching. I would like to thank all my studio guests, my online guests as well for the conversation. Thank you so much.